Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're looking at X-Way on versions of Rayquaza. This is the first one I'm going to bring to you guys. It's going to be pretty much a straight Rayquaza build. It gains Hoopa in the new set, and that really does enhance the speed of this deck even further. It actually makes it realistic that you can try and get these turn 1 things now. The turn 1 Rayquaza, the dream that we used to try and look for maybe 10-20% of the time with Ray, it's now probably up to, I'd say, about 40 to 50% of the time that you can get a turn 1 like 200 plus damage. So that's really crazy to think about. So let's jump into the deck. It's pretty much a standard Ray, so let's get straight into it. We're playing a 2-2 split of Rayquaza. This is just personal preference more than anything. I like playing 2 of the Dragon Ray so that we have a slightly nicer matchup against Manectric. It means if we can't attack turn 1, or if we are unable to Mega Evolve, it means we're actually safer with our Dragon Ray in the active rather than this Rayquaza against Manectric players, so that we'll sort of stay alive, and we can. It means we can sort of wait a turn until we're actually able to attack with a Mega against the Manectric matchup, so that we can survive a hit against them if they're going to Turbo Bolt or if they're going to use Assault Laser. So I like having the Dragon Rays because we're slightly better against Manectric overall. And also it just has an extra 10 HP, which is nice. However, it does have slightly worse attacks, so potentially you want to throw a couple of these in here just for the intensifying burn attack, and potentially even a Dragon Pulse that you might have to use at some point in the game. So I like having the split just for the versatility. If Manectric starts getting huge, I'm maybe even tempted to go for a full count of the Dragon Ray. At the moment, I'm fairly undecided. We don't really know how big Manectric's going to be. I know it's a good deck. We don't know if it's going to be the top of tier 1. But depending on how popular Manectric is, I'd be putting more of these in as Manectric and other lightning decks get more popular. However, these attacks are just slightly superior, so it's a trade-off that you guys are going to have to consider and play test a little bit with. At the moment, I'm sitting on the fence and going for the 2-2 there. Next up, we're playing 3 Mega Rayquazas, of course, not Manectrics. We know what this card does. Emerald Break, 30 times the number of your bench Pokemon. With Skyfield, we can hit 240, which is obviously huge. One of the biggest hitters we have in the format that's so speedy and consistent as well. Very nice, DC compatible. We have Mega Turbo, so we're going to look to hit this on the very first turn if we are going second. So that's basically the whole premise of the deck. Start hitting hard very quickly with Rayquaza and one-shot everything in our path. A couple of things like Hex Maniac is one way that I feel like Rayquaza really does get a huge buff thanks to Ancient Origins. It means we can run through things like Aegislash, even the new Giratina. If we hit Hex Maniac at the right times, we can just hit through these things that previously would have caused threat to Rayquaza and would have like walled us out of the game for a couple of turns and slowed us down a little bit. But that's really not the case anymore because we have Hex Maniac, so we can try and get out of that sort of stuff. So Rayquaza, very big attacker, and there's not a lot to keep it in check at the moment. So we have 4 Shaymin EX. We're trying to be as turbo as possible. I think Shaymin is the best way to do that, so we'll maximize our copies as well. Pretty standard. We don't have many good draw support. We lose Colrus, unfortunately. It's a card that Rayquaza love to play, obviously because it would make its bench crazy very early on. So we really do have the emphasis on Shaymin to draw us cards, definitely in the early game. Next up, I did mention it, Hoopa. We have 3 of these in here. Hoopa is absolutely insane in this sort of deck. It helps us fill our bench really nicely, which is awesome. And it's basically the start of the combo. Pretty much every game I look for either an Hoopa or an Ultra Ball. That's the first thing I'm hoping to find in my opening hands, because Hoopa basically gets you 3 more cards. It can get you immediately into a Mega Rayquaza, because of course we have the Delta Evolution, so that we can go into that straight away if we have a Spirit Link. And it also is going to find a Shaymin to net us more cards. So Hoopa is absolutely crazy. Really, really good for us. I like having 3 because it means that when we lose Skyfields now and again, we can just rebench a Hoopa or refind a Hoopa to refill the cost of the ones that we lost quite easily. So I think for the most part, you never really need 2 on board at one time. But for instances like when one is priced and stuff, 2 is definitely like still necessary. And having, like I say, that 3rd one for when our stadium does get bounced, it's good to refill the bench with a Hoopa and whatever else it searches out. So I really like having 3 in here. I think it makes it as speedy as possible for getting out this Rayquaza line and all of that stuff. This is basically the thing we're looking for the whole time. The Rayquazas to fill the bench and to Mega Evolve up to, and then Shaymins for more cards. Unfortunately, we can't find another Hoopa via a Hoopa. That would be like such a broken combo. But alas, we can't do that. So next up, we're playing a 1-1 Altaria. Altaria is obviously necessary at the moment because Manectric is around. Raichu gets stronger thanks to Level Ball in the new set, and a couple of other things, like it has nice support Pokemon in like Vespiquen that you can play now. So Lightning types are definitely going to be around to try and keep Rayquaza in check. There's also the new Jolteon and a lot of evolutions that people are trying to pair it with. As long as we have Altaria, anything that runs Jolteon doesn't really get the effect off ever, unless they catch a kill our Altaria or something like that, because basically if they want to even Hex Maniac our own Altaria, they Hex Maniac their own Jolteon. So anyone using Jolteon just won't work thanks to the Altaria. And as long as we have this, we either force a Lysander knockout or we force a Hex Maniac from the Raichu and the Manectric player, which can be awkward. They're not always going to have the pieces in hand to be able to do that. Maybe they have to like Ultra Ball or use a supporter for the turn to draw them into cards so they can't Hex Maniac on certain turns. So having the Altaria is definitely worth it, even though it can be shut off. It forces your opponent to actually have those answers at the right time. So it just makes Rayquaza a bit healthier for the most part, and it's pretty useful even as a 1-1. The reason why I don't have more than this, I originally started with 2-2, but it just made the deck really clunky in my own opinion. I'd rather be just quicker and try and prize trade on Manectrics as quickly as possible, and have like, whenever I find my 1-1 Altaria line, have that for that turn where I can potentially survive a hit and then take 2 more prizes the next turn, rather than having, okay, I'm going to have Clear Humming all game definitely because I have a 2-2 in here, but it's just times when you're drawing into it via Shaymins and then you just have nothing else to do because you've drawn into essentially dead cards. So I like it being streamlined as best as possible, but I definitely see the value of playing the 1-1 Altaria. For the other non-EX Pokemon, we are playing 1 Bunnelby. Bunnelby is fantastic for recovering a few clutch things in the deck, such as energy. Definitely energy denial decks can be a frustration for Rayquaza, so being able to shuffle those back into the deck is important. We can also get back Pokemon if we really need to. We do play a Sacred Ash in here. I feel like it's fairly staple for Rayquaza to play Sacred Ash, just because when Skyfield goes, we have to keep dumping our Pokemon. So Bunnelby can recover a Sacred Ash even if we've lost it in the early turns while we're aggressively searching out our combo. So Bunnelby really is a nice lifeline for us to have, I feel, and I like having it in here. It's a non-EX as well, so we can throw it up in the active if there's nothing we really want to do on a single turn. So it's good to have the Bunnelby in here, I feel. Finally, we're playing one of the new Registeels. This is a card you may not expect to be in a Rayquaza deck, I guess. But I feel like it's necessary to have at least one of these non-EX attackers in here. The reason why I've chosen Registeel is because of the new Regi-Ice, ironically enough, that can pretty much stonewall every other card in my deck. So I like having a Registeel to run through the occasional Regi-Ice that might pop up. For those of you who don't know, it has a similar attack to the Hippowdon, but it's weak to metal, and it's a basic, so I feel like it's slightly better than the Hippowdon overall, because it hits, you know, fairly decent math, and it's like quicker to get out than the Hippowdon would be. So I like the Registeel because it can one-shot opposing Regi-Ices, which like is the only thing that can really threaten a Rayquaza other than Hippowdon itself as well, because against like Giratina and other safeguard type things, we can just Hex Maniac through them and carry on going with the Rayquaza. But Regi-Ice doesn't give you that option, so I prefer having the Registeel in here who can just handle one or two of those, which is pretty cool. Additionally, in every now and then you might have the chance to use the attack against other EXs, where you can discard special energy attached to EX Pokemon and deal 70 damage. I guess it's something to do, but I've rarely ever used it outside of dealing with Regi-Ice. This could be any other card, really. I like having a non-EX that can attack. That's the only thing I would bear in mind. It can be colorless pretty much. The only reason why I run basic metal is because I play this. You could look to play some other basic type with decent attacks, but because I put it in here simply for coverage against Regice, which otherwise would really harm this deck, I'm happy with having one of these in here. I would never play more than one, I don't think, just because of space, but I feel like one is necessary, even though we have, like I say, Hexmaniac gets us through the majority of the field, but there are still cards like Hippowdon and stuff that would pretty much stonewall Rayquaza. And I think people are going to look to stonewall Rayquaza because I think it's going to be like near the top of tier 1 going into the XY on format. So I'm trying to be cautious at the moment. That could be, you know, a more preferable attacker based on your own testing. So bear that in mind. That's not set in stone that you need to play a Registeel, but I'm trying to put you through the processes of why I've decided on that one card. Next up, I have the Sacred Ash. Like I say, very essential. We're losing a lot of Pokemon via knockouts and also via the Skyfield being bounced. So Sacred Ash, we need to have it back so that we can recover our board state and have Pokemon throughout the game so that Rayquaza can still hit as hard as it can. We're playing 2 switches. We have some bulkier things. The Shaymins are annoying. The Hoopas have a 2 retreat cost. The Registeel has a 3 retreat cost. And basically, whenever you're starting with one of those, instead of a Rayquaza, you pretty much need to find a switch in addition to the rest of your combo pieces to actually get that turn 1 attack. So we've got to play a couple of switch in there to try and move whatever's out inactive. And also, if people are trying to catch a stall, things like Hoopa, we've got to have outs for that sort of thing. So 2 switches definitely enough, I feel. Definitely because if we know they're playing like a stally type deck, trying to catch out things, we still have Bunnelby to recover those 2 switches. So Bunnelby really gives us good options, so I'm happy with 2 switch in here. Next up we have 2 Compressor. Compressor is very helpful for us to activate VS Seeker to get us into our supporters quickly. It also puts energy in the discard pile to activate our Mega Turbos quickly as well. And it puts other pieces that we don't really need, like the Registeel is really in here a lot of the time, just it's going to be discarded away. But that one time when it's useful, I feel like I'd love to have it in the list. So we can get rid of things we don't need, like Altaria when we're not against Lightning. So plenty of reasons why Battle Compressor is good. And I like seeing this card early on as well. Like I say, it gets us into VS Seekers being really powerful. Here are those VS Seekers. We're playing 3 in here. I feel like 4 is pretty much too much for the most part. I get away with running 3 in current testing. We do need it to respam Hexmaniac in those matchups such as Giratina, such as Metal as well, where we need to hit through Aegislash. VS Seekering Hexmaniac is very important. Also VS Seekering Lysander is another way of sort of getting around it. Killing maybe Shaymins to take our final prizes is always an option as well. So respamming those supporters also, of course, in the early turns, like I say, Compressor so that we can VS Seeker into like a Juniper. It's a really nice combo, so having 3 I'm definitely happy with. Let me spread out the trainers so you can see them all a bit better. Something I'm trying to be a bit more careful of. I know some people prefer seeing the whole list sort of be spread out, and I'm trying to do my best here. We will move on to 3 Trainers Mail. I really like Trainers Mail. I think we play something like 30 trainers on top of the 3 Trainers Mail, so 30 targets, I guess, for the Trainers Mail. So on average, we're getting to choose 1 of 2 trainers that we peel out of the top 4. And it really helps us get into our Ultra Balls. That's probably the main thing I look for most of the time, because Hoopa is the thing that really starts your combo. And Ultra Ball just makes it so much nicer because you can dump cards that you don't need so that your Shaman gets stronger. So Trainer's Mail really does appreciate that. Also, finding the Spirit Links is very important. Finding other combo pieces like you're seeing here. Often the Mega Turbo is something we look for. On top of the fact that we can find our Stadium and our supporters, it's just very, very, very helpful for finding the combo pieces that we need. Next up, 3 Mega Turbo. We need it so that we can attack turn 1, basically. It's our acceleration in the deck. Alongside the DCE, we can get 3 energy on in a turn to fulfill the attack cost, so pretty necessary in here. I'm happy with 3 at the moment. I don't think I'd go to 4. It's kind of painful when you miss it, and it is frustrating when you miss the combo, but for the most part I think 3 is enough because it's pretty much dead weight and something you can't really insta-play, so it doesn't really activate your Shamans very nicely, so I think 3 is enough because we can draw so hard through the deck. We play 4 Ultra Ball. It's another thing along with the compressor that can get rid of energy, which is a big plus. And it is ridiculously valuable now that we have Hoopa. Ultra Ball can basically mean find yourself a bench Pokemon and like to fulfill the cost for Rayquaza, and it finds you a Ray, a Mega Ray, and a Shaman. That's the ideal. It can sometimes be, you know, a mix-up. It can be 2 Shaman and a Rayquaza. It could be 2 Ray and a Shaman. Whatever else you need. It's just makes Hoopa so... Well, it makes Ultra Ball so valuable thanks to Hoopa. So, absolutely excellent. We obviously need it as well for finding Altaria as quickly as possible in those matchups where we need it. So, maximizing copies is an absolute no-brainer. You cannot have less than 4 Ultra Ball in the Speed Rayquaza deck, thanks to Hoopa these days. Additionally, I've tried to max out the Spirit Links as well for Rayquaza. Like I say, we're trying to be as speedy as possible. Having the 4 accessible to us gives us good odds of starting with it, and we have Trainer's Mail to try and search into it as quickly as possible as well. It means that we don't get clumped with the Mega Ray in hand, and it means that Hoopa can search out that Mega Ray very quickly so that we can insta-play it thanks to having Spirit Links in hand, so that we can just Shaman for more cards and carry on, rather than having the awkward thinking of having to go, okay, I can't pick up the Mega from a Hoopa right now because it means I can't insta-play, so Shaman's getting 1 less card. So I just won't find the Mega at all and then hopefully draw into it later in the combo. Maximizing the copies of Spirit Link sort of harms those sorts of headache moments as best we can, really. For stadiums, it's pretty simple as well. We're playing the 4 Skyfield. We really need to maximize Skyfield because Rayquaza needs it for the output, basically. And we max it out so that we can get into it early enough so that we're not stuck midway through the combo with a Shaman in hand, but we can't play it because we missed the Skyfield. So that still can happen, obviously. Definitely with Hoopas, it can happen more frequently because you fill your bench so rapidly in the opening turns. But you just got to hope that you draw into these things. It is a combo-based deck, unfortunately, even though it is very fast now. Sometimes you can miss parts of the combo and miss the turn 1. Like I say, I wouldn't expect to get it more than 50% of the time, even with Hoopa. But the old Speed Ray, I was pretty much hitting around 30% of getting a turn 1 Rayquaza. And this is definitely a huge step up from that because, you know, 200 or so plus damage on turn 1 is very, very difficult to deal with for almost every deck. So hitting that 50% or so of the time is just a huge, huge factor. Next up, we have the Hex Maniac. I've already discussed it and how it really also is a big bonus for Ray. It helps us hit through, you know, these awkward things like Aegis Slash. Giratina is an issue as well, so gets us through all of those things. Very, very nice. Also gets around Vileplume as well, so that we can carry on moving through the rest of our strategy, which is pretty important because we have, like I say, a lot of trainer-based cards in here, a lot of trainer draw and such. So Hex Maniac really does help out against Vileplume and also every other thing that is just going to frustrate us throughout the day. Then we have 1 Birch, mainly so that we have an option other than Sycamore if we have really awkward hands of multiple double colourless energies, for example, or multiple Mega Rays without any Spirit Links, stuff like that. It's good to throw a Birch in here so that we can once or twice have the option to VS Seeker back a Birch and just shuffle in the deck and get more cards rather than having to Juniper away and then having to like rely on a Bunnelby that game. So I just like having the 1 in here. I wouldn't play more than 1 just because of space issues, and we're trying to really like not draw into this card as best we can. And Juniper's still just the strongest one that we look for when we're trying to dig through our deck as quickly as possible on the first turn. So happy with 1 just for the option it gives us, but I wouldn't play more than that. Next up, we're playing the 2 Lysander. It's another way that we can sort of deal with Vileplumes because we can Lysander it up, maybe stick it there for a couple of turns so we don't get damaged by whatever they're using, and eventually we'll kill it with a Rayquaza attack to try and get us back out of Trainer Lock. Also, it's going to be used to pick off things to finish off our game, looking at Shamans and stuff, definitely in non-EX based decks like Bevolutions. That's a new thing that's pretty popular, I think. Being able to Lysander Shamans to finish games a turn or 2 earlier is pretty useful, so Lysander's still really nice. We can just catch her up and kill anything because we just do huge bursts of damage, so Lysander's really nice for us. And finally, like I say, for Sycamore, it is the preferred supporter pretty much always. Just great draw power for us. You can also get energy in the discard pile for the Mega Turbos, so pretty useful overall, and definitely has to be a 4 of, I'd say. So onto energy, we are playing the 4 double colorless energy. We need it obviously for Rayquaza, pretty standard there, nothing too big of a deal. And then we're just playing the 4 metal energy. I'm fairly happy with 4, definitely because we have Bunnelby. I know that I can, as long as I keep track of my energy count, we can sometimes cycle back, 2 more energy. Maybe you want to get the metals back, maybe you want to get the double colorless energies back. You could even look for Mega Turbos if that's the way you want to go down. Find like 1 Mega Turbo, 1 DCE to recycle a fully charged Rayquaza in the following turns via Bunnelby. So I'm happy with a total count of 8, simply because we have Bunnelby in the deck, and thanks to Compressor and Juniper and Ultra Ball, we do have good outs of trying to find these 4 energy and shove them in the discard pile for the turn 1 attack. So that is the deck, guys. Overall, Rayquaza is a real powerhouse in XY on. As you saw, it's really not changed too much. It really just loses Execute and not much else, because supporter-wise, you never really played that many ends. I guess the Metal Ray builds did play 1 or 2 Colruses, but thanks to Hoopa, I feel like it just gains a lot of strength. Like I say, very, very speedy. Looking for that turn 1 as often as you can is a huge, huge strategy against almost every deck, so it really can just stonewall them out of the game straight away, just based on prize trade alone. So Rayquaza, definitely a powerful thing going into XY on. I hope you enjoyed the list, and I'd like to hear what non-EX attacker you would like to put in the place of Registeel. I myself, I've just picked it, like I said, because I feel like the deck does need 1 non-EX attacker, other than Bunnelby, like a thing that can actually physically attack, to deal with stuff like Hippowdon and Regice, because they are frustrating to Rayquaza decks otherwise. And Hexmaniac is pretty much the thing I look for everything else that would frustrate the deck. So overall, I'm quite happy with this. I'd love to see what you would put in this single slot. It could be as simple as a Regigigas, or I don't know, a Zapdos, some random thing like that. Because of course we can go to colorless energy and substitute out these metal ones for any other colorless energy. So I'd love to hear your opinions on that, and also your opinions on Rayquaza in general now that we have Hoopa accessible to it. I think it is a real threat in the upcoming format. So that is the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. It's been Joe here, and I will see you guys next time.